So there's this thing that happens every year in October called Inktober. And I've known about that for a few years, but I've never attempted it. Because, well, you need to make a drawing for each day, which is already a bit tricky, but then you need to use ink, or at least something that looks like ink. And if there's something I like, it's color. I really like using a lot of color, so to not be able to do that was going to be a bit tricky. Luckily, there is something that's really good about this Inktober, and that's the theme. You see, every Inktober, there's an official list of prompts you can draw. Of course, you don't have to do this, but I figured if I'm not following the theme, then it's not really a challenge, so I decided to go with it. And the theme for this year was all travel related. Like, look at it. Every single one, except for a few odd ones out, like rhinoceros, are all about exploring or traveling. And so this is very helpful as I have a character, Chocolate, who just so happens to be quite travel related. And so he's going to be the guy for this Inktober. He won't be in every single one exactly, but he will be related to each one in some way. Well, for day one, there's backpack. And since Chocolate already has a backpack, I figured I'd just increase its size a little. He's having a little bit of trouble with it, as you can probably see. And for day two, the prompt is discovery. And for this one, it seems like they discovered a strange little door in the ground. And it seems like whoever lives there is probably not very fond of visitors. And then for day 3, we have boots. I don't know how effective something like this would actually be, but they're like suction cup boots that stick to the side of a mountain. Chocolate seems to be having a little bit of trouble, but the blobber seems to be having a good time being dragged along. And for day 4, the prompt is exotic. And now, this may seem a bit odd at first, as you may not immediately picture a toilet as being too exotic. But you gotta remember, exotic just means something that's like far away or new or different. If these guys aren't used to toilets, or if they've never seen a toilet before, then that's gonna be very exotic to them. It's kind of like how the idea of what fantasy would mean in a fantasy world would probably be something like a very normal world for us. Like, cars in a fantasy world would probably be considered exotic. Then for day 5, we have binoculars. And this is a perfect example of how, even if you have no idea what you're doing or how to use something, as long as you act confident and like you know what you're doing, you can usually get away with it. Like how that blobber is staring straight at that rock in front of him. Then for day 6, we have trek. And this is kind of going to get me into the one thing I actually disliked about this Inktober. So for this prompt, trek, I don't have a problem with it. You know, it's all travel related. Trek is completely fine right now. But as you'll see, this starts to become a bit of a problem later. Alright, so this one was a bit of a tricky one. It was passport. And I didn't quite know what to do for this one, as I don't really know if Chocolate has a passport. He's not exactly in a modern world. I don't think there's exactly like airports and stuff you need to have a passport for. But this was what I came up with. A gate guard guarding someplace that you need some sort of ticket or thing to get through. It's probably not actually a passport that he has, but it's close enough. Alright, so you remember the prompt trek? I mean, you probably do because it just happened a few seconds ago. But yeah, I didn't quite know what to do for hike now, because hike and trek are, well, they're synonyms for the same thing. So this one was a bit of a tricky one to figure out. It's basically just the same thing. Chocolate and the blobbies are just walking. This one was kind of a boring one, and as you'll see, this starts to become even more of a problem. Then for day 9, we have sun, and for this one, it's a little more of an abstract one. Since the sun's kind of fiery and hot, I decided to have Chocolate be a little bit angry, kind of whipping his ribbons around or something. It's a very ornate and decorative type of one, not something I usually do. Then for day 10 we have nomadic, and I figure what's a better way to show nomadic than a tent that's a hot air balloon. I mean, sleeping in a tent is like the one time of day that you'd think you'd stop for a bit, but no, Chocolate is so much of a nomad that even when he's sleeping, he's still traveling. Then for day 11 we have snacks, and though there aren't exactly any sort of fast food junky snacks in the wilderness, there are some other snacks you can make, like mushrooms and acorns and whatever you manage to forage. So that's what Chocolate's trying to do here. He's trying to make some snacks. I don't know how good they are though. I don't think Chocolate's very much of a chef. Then for day 12 we have remote. And I'm sure the idea for this was, like a remote location, a remote house on an island or something. But no, I took the prompt remote literally and gave Chocolate a remote controlled drone. And it seems like he's using it pretty effectively. Alright, so now we have horizon. And you see why I start having a bit of trouble with these prompts? I mean, horizon is I kind of already did that with trek. It was a big zoomed out scene. I didn't know what to do differently between trek, hike, and horizon. They're too similar. Oh, but don't worry, because now for day 14 we have roam. This is just the same thing. Hike, trek, roam, horizon. These are... I like the idea of travel prompts, but if you're just going to be using synonyms for the same word, then I'd like something a little bit different. I don't know, could they really not think of anything else, like cave, or crevasse, or rope, or flashlight, or ruins, or misty, foggy? I don't know, I feel like there's just a lot of different things you could come up with rather than hike, trek, roam. At least for day 15 we have guidebook, which this is a good unique one. Though it isn't much of a guidebook that I made, I turned it more into a forager's guide, which I guess is a type of guidebook, but I don't know, it's a bit different. Also, the idea of this forager's book is that if you fail to successfully forage anything, you can just eat the book itself. It's edible. So this was a bit of an odd one. For day 16 we have grungy. So, what's more grungy than some trash cans stuck to the ceiling of some sewer place? I don't really know what's going on with this one, but I think it's grungy. This is a nice one. For day 17 we have journal. And for this one, Chocolate is just writing under the light of the moon. I kind of like the way the night sky looks, with it being all black, but it doesn't fill up the whole canvas. Just kind of the middle part is black. Alright, so here's a fun one. Probably the most fun one I've done for this Inktober. This one was actually inspired from a dream. Yes, I had a dream where Chocolate and the Blobbies were driving a broken down red car thing. And so, since the prompt is drive, I just had to draw that image. It's funny because I never really have dreams of like the stuff I make, like Chocolate and the Blobbies, but this was like the one dream I had of them, and it's such a weird thing. This may be my least favorite one of Inktober this year. It's Ridge. I don't know why, I don't really like how this turned out. If I had more time I would have worked longer to fix it, but I mean when you have to draw a picture per day, you kinda have to go a bit quickly. And then for day 20 we have Uncharted, and this is probably a pretty useful map as long as you ignore the fact that half of it isn't actually mapped out. Yeah, just ignore the question mark and don't go there. I think this day is a good example of how the weirder prompts I actually find to be easier. I mean, this is rhinoceros. I don't know what other people are doing for rhinoceros on this day, but it feels like fitting rhinoceros into a travel theme might be a bit difficult. But for me, this just came like immediately. When I heard rhinoceros, I was just like, yes, the Blobbies are going to have rhinoceros hats. I don't know why this one was so easy. This should have been a difficult one. But honestly, if all the prompts were like this, I'd have a lot easier time than hike or trek or roam or horizon. Kinda wish there were more of these prompts. Alright, so for some reason, camp is ridiculously short. I don't know why I drew it so quickly, but yeah, this is the fastest one I drew this Inktober. Alright, so this was a mean one. It's rust. I don't know how they were expecting you to draw rust when you can only use black and white. The main thing about rust that makes it rust is the fact that it's like that brown color. Not being able to use brown just makes it pretty difficult. And so I did cheat a little bit and I added some color in. Very faint color. Maybe it could be the color of an ink, but it is color. Then for day 24, we have Expedition, which is a good prompt to get me in the mood of drawing mountains, because after this, I'm going to be drawing a lot of mountains. That's my next theme. Also, this one took me quite some time to do because drawing a mountain with all its detail with ink is a bit tricky to do, especially since I'm really not used to drawing mountains. Now that I think about it, I've like barely drawn mountains before. Whenever I do, it's always just like faintly in the background, but even then it's mostly just like the silhouette of a mountain, not really the detail. Mountains are kinda tricky to do. Then for day 25, there's Scarecrow, which is a bit tricky because I don't think Chocolate actually ever encounters a scarecrow on his travels, but he does encounter this thing that is a little bit scarecrow-like, so I drew that. Then for day 26 we have Camera, and these mushroom guys were something I came up with a long time ago, but I never actually really drew them in any like digital format, so here I finally decided to do them. And I imagine they don't really like bright lights, so if you flash them with a camera, they probably get a bit stunned. Then again, maybe it's kind of hard to tell because I think they always look a little bit surprised. Then for day 27 we have Road. This is one of the weirder ones. It's like a cave, but it's also a road. I don't know, you can figure it out by looking at it. I don't know what else to say about it, it's a bit weird. Alright, so for day 28 there's Jumbo. And this is kind of like a callback to the first prompt I did. Since the first one was just backpack and I drew just a bigger backpack, I figured might as well go back and make it even bigger. So yeah, this definitely is a jumbo-sized backpack. Alright, so this one took me the longest out of all the prompts, and it's Navigator. And the reason this one took me a while was because I got the idea of making an alligator navigation sort of thing. And so that was kind of tricky to do because I didn't have much time to really create the design. I mean, I had one day. So yeah, I struggled a bit with this one. In the end, I'm not really happy with it, but I will definitely come back and rework the design of the navigator in the future. I don't know who thought throwing violin into a travel theme was a good idea, but I think it's a good idea because I got to do this really weird violin gun sort of thing. I imagine Chocolate would use this as a sort of weapon, a sound weapon. Then, for day 31, there's Landmark. And we're done. So that's all of them. Overall, it was a good challenge, but I did have some problems with it. As you know, hike, roam, trek, horizon, navigator, they're kind of just all the same thing. Like, I really wish they had more prompts other than those. They're just too similar. Though, I did like the fact that there was an overall theme this time. This was my first time doing Inktober, so I don't know what the other ones were like. But looking back at their prompt lists, it seems like they were all mostly random things, and I just like the idea of there being a cohesive theme to kind of work around. You can kind of tell a story with it that way. And having them all be travel related is a good idea, and I hope they do this again next year. But just with a few different words other than synonyms for the same thing. So, now for the question, did I actually improve? And did I learn anything? Well, I learned I like using color, and I don't like using black and white, though I think I already knew that. And as for whether I improved or not, I mean I probably did. I don't really notice a difference in these. but I'm sure I've definitely gotten a little bit better at using ink and just sketching in general. Also, I did learn something that may change the way I make art in the future a little bit, and that's that I realized I really like how easy it was to draw these. I don't like that I had to do them every single day, but the fact that I was able to do them every day means that they were fairly quick to make. And I kind of like the idea of, along with my more painterly artworks, also having a type of style that I do where it's mainly sketch-like, kind of like these, but just with color. And then I could just do those faster than my other paintings. I don't know, I might experiment with something like that. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this Inktober. I don't think I'm going to do this again next year, as I just don't really like this, having to do it every single day and working with ink, but it was a good one-time challenge, and I'm glad I at least did it once.